along with the superintendents and pastors. And then we thank God for our gracious supervisor, Mother Span, God bless her, and to our assistant supervisor, God bless, and to all of you, the Lord's people that are gathered tonight. Again, I'm indeed delighted to be a part of Greater Maryland First and to share tonight during this summit on tonight. Tonight, my task is to certainly talk with us about advancing ministry through succession planning, but we'd like to deal with it from a ministry perspective, from an auxiliary perspective, not just at the senior level. And so tonight, that's where we're going to hang our hat. Joshua was a great leader because he grabbed the baton passed to him by his mentor Moses, but he failed to do the same for the next generation. The next generation was left without a successor. The end result was there arose another generation who did not know the Lord, and they abandoned vision and God's purpose for years. And that's in Joshua chapter 24, verse 31. Generation is a group of people of like nature, either by age or generation. Number one, to discern and to accomplish the will of God for their generation. And David served God's purpose in his generation, and he fell asleep. So the end result of each generation and those that are a part of that generation, it is to accomplish the will of God for that specific time. To serve this present age, my calling to fulfill. Second, to shore up the foundations by remembering the promises, if not all the practices from the past generation. Isaiah 58. It is to shore up the foundations by remembering the promises, if not all the practices. Isaiah 58, verse 12. And number three, to pass on truth to the next generation and to guide them into a personal encounter with God. It is to ensure that the next generation coming behind you knows God. Psalm 78, verse 4. I believe discerning this hour is critical. And if we are not discerning the times and generations, Satan has planned to work to deceive and to destroy each generation, and his focus is always on the young. He puts conflict between parents and children, thereby alienating each generation from the previous generation. He knows this generation, have the potential to subdue him. Revelations 12 says the dragon is angry at the woman and he goes after her offsprings. Now, if I had a PowerPoint projector, I would project what I call generational waves, and there are 7 waves or generational categories that people fall in. One generation is called the greatest generation, 1901 through 1924. The silent generation, 1925 through 1945. The baby boomer generation, 1946 through 1964. Generation X, 1965 through 1979. Generation Y, the millennials, 1980 through 1994. Generation Z, 1995 through 2012. And now Generation Alpha, it's 2013 through 2025. And can I tell you, we are living in an hour where all these generations are in our churches. All 7 of these generations are in our churches. And the last 4 groups, which is the Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha, are what the statisticians call the group that provides the energy into the economy, into our social institutions, and into the church, because they embrace constant change and innovation. And that's the group where a lot of movement happens. I would dare to say it is these last 4 groups, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha, it's going to push us into planning succession, because this group don't stay nowhere long. I'm teaching good right there. And so where we were unwilling to move with the greatest generation and the silent generation and the baby boomer generation, the last 4 groups are going to push us in our local churches, not just senior pastors, but in our local churches when it relates to ministries, having to put plans in place, because that group is not staying in the workplace on one job long, and neither are they staying in churches. I grew up in the church that it was unthinkable to be a member of only one church pretty much all my life. But now people move because they move to new cities, they move to new areas, they're more willing to take jobs other places. We wouldn't take jobs if it meant leaving our churches when I was coming up. That's not the case now. And so it is in the business arena, it is also affecting the church. And so the church is not left with a vacuum, left with situations that we cannot produce ministry because we haven't created a plan of how to continue ministries beyond the one who's there right then. These last 4 entities are going to push us into thinking beyond what's in front of us right now. Generational waves. Each generation brings with it a whole new culture and different ways of doing things. This overlapping of generations is like waves crashing into each other, causing much damage. If not prayerfully discerned and managed, it's almost equivalent. It can do the damage of a tsunami. Each generational wave comes in, there is a resulting change in culture of the church. Each generation brings a culture shift in the church. Each generation brings a culture shift in the church. And although we never accept sinful values of each new culture, we must distinguish these from non-sinful customs, style, and preferences of each generation. We must know what's a preference and what's a sin, because each generation brings another culture. Am I right about it? Generational waves. Truths and principles are eternal and must be passed to each generation. However, our leadership, methods, our emphasis, they do and they must change. If not, the church runs the risk of being irrelevant and the loss of a whole generation. Thereby, succession must be planned. Say that with me. Succession must be planned. And succession, as Bishop Pierce said last night, it's a smooth continuation of activities, services, and gains. It's a smooth continuation. We can continue, but the word is it is smooth and healthy. A smooth, healthy continuation of activities, services, and gain. Leadership succession planning is a process that develops a plan for replacing the current pastor, as Bishop Pierce talks about last night, or key ministry leaders, and begins to implement that plan prior to the current departure or removal or death. The purpose of pastoral and leadership succession planning is to enable a church to move forward into the next phase of its external mission and internal development with a new leader or new leaders appropriate to those developmental tasks with a minimum of spiritual, programmatic, material, and people loss during the transition. If we can plan succession, we'll have loss of spiritual value, our programs can continue, and we will have loss of people. So it's important that we plan. This takes seriously the call of Jesus to not only bear fruit, but to bear fruit that will remain or last. And currently, though, since many church leaders often resist succession planning, a transitional rot frequently sets in that seriously jeopardizes the years of faithful and fruitful ministry. It's a shame to build it and kill it at the same time. We don't bring glory to God when the very thing that we spent our blood trying to build, we kill it because we let rot settle in. Can I go on? If it's not moved, rot is going to settle in. If there isn't consistent movement, rot is going to settle in. And when something begins to rot, you start smelling a stench. It doesn't have the fragrance that is appealing. There must be planned succession. Now, who's going to lead the church in developing a leadership succession plan for ministries? If a church is going to successfully develop and implement a plan, it is essential that the pastor provides the leadership that will encourage this to happen. Ministry leaders cannot provide succession plans. I'm going to say that again. You cannot prepare for the next leader to take your departmental place because you were appointed yourself. Leadership succession in ministries, it has to become one of the great responsibilities of the pastor. You cannot expect lay leaders to initiate this conversation. Most of them do not know how to bring up the subject, and besides, most of them are reluctant to say anything about leaving, about moving, or about dying. And though we believe we are not eternal, we function like we are. Okay, all right. Like every other important issue in the church, the pastor must lead in planning ministry succession in your local assembly. How do we begin? How do we begin? How do we begin? Here are a few points I'd like to consider, for us to consider. Establish a clear vision and goal for ministry succession planning. What is the chief end of the vision of your local church? And then establish a vision and a goal for ministry succession planning. Because you may discover that one ministry functions in one generation, but it won't function in this. So succession is not just keeping something going because we've had it going. it provides an opportunity to review its effect. Because we had it does not mean we can have it now. I talked to our women's ministry, and please don't get me supervising. All right. I talked to our women's, I was asking them, I said, why don't y'all have a sewing circle down here? See, look at I'm not against the sewing circle, but let's talk about, is it generationally prudent? Who sews? Oh, y'all don't want to hear what I'm saying. The purpose of the sewing circle when I came up, it was to teach women how to mend garments for themselves, how to make garments for themselves, how to adorn yourself, but how to make them. I don't know many women that's sewing now. They're getting them made. They're getting them tailored. I ain't mad at you girls, go on, but they ain't doing it. How effective will that be to a millennial generation who's probably never seen a sewing machine? So then when you look at succession planning, you have to look at, is this, now don't y'all kill me. Listen, I am not against the sewing circle, so don't, please. I'm trying to show you that something can be effective in one generation and it may not function in another generation. So though you keep the principle, you may have to use something else. All right? Succession planning, number 2, must be seen as a must be seen as a spiritual matter. Prayer must precede your selection of who is to replace who. It has nothing to do, and you may get me, but it's okay. It has nothing to do with tenure alone. Because tenure alone doesn't necessarily mean the skill set is there. Faithfulness does not always equal ability. And so we must enter into this whole act of succession planning on a ministry level. Prayer must precede the selection. And number 3, the successor should be qualified. The skill set, the maturity, the readiness, watch this, the IQ and the EQ. We need intelligence and we need emotional strength. Core competence should be taken into consideration. Number 4, the successor must be willing to engage, walk in, adhere to the established plan. As a successor, you don't create the plan, you walk in the plan that's laid out. Number 5, decide on a timeline for the succession plan. For example, you may say that phase 1, the first 3 months, is planning assessment. And phase 2, for example, might be development and implementation. And so you set a timeline, you set a plan in place so that you can track where each entity is, where each person is, what's going on, and how they are progressing. You can spot their areas of deficiencies if there is a timeline that's put in place. And number 6, first, you must become familiar with the elements of the ministry leadership succession planning. Become familiar what it takes to put a succession plan in place for the various ministries. Number 7, make it a point to talk with other pastors and leaders who have developed and implemented a ministry leadership succession plan. Now, the church in Carolina when I went there, we're celebrating 150 years that church has been in existence. 150 years. That's a long time. 150 years. I am the 13th pastor of that particular church. That church has multi-level generations in that church. Talk about a generational wave. It's right there in that particular church. But when I got there 15 years ago, or 12 years ago now as a pastor, one When I got there, as good as they were, as great as they were, there were a lot of hiccups, and there was a lot of areas that could become better. I'll just say it like that. And so what I began to do, and because of what happened in the prior leadership of the church had become so, silos were created all over through the church. And so one of the things that I did was I came in and created, because I had succession planning in my mind when I first got there, I instituted team leadership, because every person, every ministry was headed by one person alone. They made all the decisions, made all the rules, and it was, and I said, you know what, let's break that up. Let's set up team ministry, co-leadership. I wanted this to become a way that people can start talking to each other, because so many silos had creeped into the church because of what had happened. For some it was tough. For some, it was tough because they were used to being all in one. But what I discovered, we were losing efficiency and proficiency and good talent, because other talent couldn't rise to the top. And so we kept pressing in on it. We created team ministries that no ministry functioned just by one person. Was it tough? Oh, it was tough. Did we have a lot of drag out fights? Yes, we did. But I continue to teach team ministry, because that to me was the ministry that Jesus modeled. Jesus modeled team ministry. He never sent the disciples out by themselves. He sent them out 2 by 2. That is the biblical paradigm, I believe, of strong leadership. Because what happens so many times when there's only one person doing it, when that one person's no longer there, a vacuum is created and it stops. You can't keep rebuilding over and over and over again. At some point, we've got to say, what can we do that we create a constant and not just rebuilding over and over again? And so we created that there. First couple of years, I probably spent more of my time counseling people, because they couldn't take each other. Well, they would come to me with ideas. Bishop, I think I want to do whatever. I said, did you talk to your teammate? Well, no, I'm coming to talk. No. In fact, the next time you come to me, y'all come together. So it took some years for that to catch on within our church. And because it caused people to come out of their exclusivity and to say that this is not going to work unless we have buy-in from each other. And it finally started becoming a part of what we had to do. And what I began to notice, it opened a door, watch this, of what I call great leadership that's untapped. Because now other people start understanding, maybe perhaps I have something to contribute as well. We noticed that when it came time for people, they got sick, things happened, people went away, people went on vacation. Ministries didn't stop because somebody else knew what to do other than you. Is anybody hearing what I'm saying? And that ministry is not designed to be the secret squirrel. No. It's designed so that the work of Jesus Christ can continue. And so we instituted that plan within our church. We saw it come to fruition, and we've seen it. Do we have hiccups? Yes, we have hiccups. But I tell you what happens at the end of the year when it's time for me to make reappointments and new appointments. I discovered I have a new pool of leaders to choose from, because it opens the door to leaders rising from the bottom up to the top. Because they understand I have an opportunity. Initiate general conversations on succession planning with your leaders. Now, let me go back to this. Did I have some problem with old timers? Yes, sirree, Bob. And you know what I told? I told one person in our church, they came to me and they was really letting me have it because, they've been doing this job for I've been doing this job since you were born, before you were born. And you know what I told them? I said, you right. You right. What thou sayest is righteth. You've done a wonderful, yes, I've done a wonderful good job. I said, but here's the thing I want you to consider. I said, this church is 140 years old. I said, don't you know you're going to die? This church got more behind them than you do in front of you. Every person who's had this job before you, they gone. And with all due respect, you going too. Oh. Now, needless to say, they got mad at me. They got mad at me because when you own something, oh boy, it's getting quiet in here. We have found identification by the roles that we carry out. And when we own it, we don't see it as a work of the church. I see it as who I am. And when you see it as who you are, it's hard to see that somebody can do it better than you, even though you've done it great. But there's greater coming behind you. Oh, ain't anybody paying me no mind up in here. Yeah. In some kind of way, the spirit of ownership has got to be broken. Because if it's not broken, you're going to miss growth coming behind it. Did it cause some issues? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And here's what I would sing to them. To serve this present age, you're calling to fulfill. You're called to serve the age God called you to. And when your time is up, you gracefully step aside. Oh, I'm treading in some deep water here. During the process of this, watch it, during the process of this, I had to teach church-wide about team ministry. I had to make it just as a part of my teaching, as a part of our flow. It wasn't just a part of our managing style. I made it a part of our teaching. I taught on succession. I taught on passing the baton. I taught on what happens that when instead of holding the baton to the next runner and the baton falls, what happens to the next person who has to catch a falling baton? The time that's lost because you want to grip a baton beyond your time. Oh, yeah. And I taught on it. I talked about when you serve beyond your time and the grace of what you've been given has lifted. And when the grace, oh, you don't want to hear what I'm saying. When the grace of what God has called you to do lifts, then what you do is not a joy, it's a struggle and a burden. And you must come to a place that you allow the same grace that God put on Paul. Paul said, he has graced me to serve as an apostle of Jesus Christ, not by the will of men, but by the will of Jesus Christ. But then he also writes and said, the time of my departure is at hand. You got to know when to come in and when to leave. Well, y'all don't want to hear what I'm saying. And so I taught it, made it a part of our ministry practice. I taught that we're not getting rid of you. We're building on what you started. I taught the people not only just praise the successor, but celebrate the predecessor. You don't tear down what they've done. You build on what they've done. That we're going to celebrate who you are. That you can watch what God is doing in your lifetime. That you can see the promise come into manifestation and not just hold on to it in faith and die, but you can see it. I had to teach on it. I had to teach on Sunday. I had to talk about it on Sunday mornings, made it a part of my morning's message because that's when they came to church. Okay, that y'all had a problem up here. But in the South, they come to church on Sunday morning. And so you got to get them while they're there. And I taught it because I wanted them to see that this was biblical, that this is a biblical paradigm. Plan succession with existing ministry leaders. Begin the team and pair up. Bring one generation up to another generation. Pair them together. Let wisdom and energy marry each other. It's not about replacing another. It's about causing what God has called us to do better. I've got 4 minutes and my time is up. Celebrate the predecessor for their time in service. What we do with leaders who have served at the end of the year, we give them a great celebration. That's what we do at our look. We thank you because I recognize that we stand on the shoulders. And then give grace to the new successor in their new place of assignment. Now, what are the results of having a healthy ministry succession plan? Some of the results are this. Number one, it maintains organizational community. It maintains organizational community. Come on, say it maintains organizational community. That's important. It maintains organizational community. Number two, it enhances engagement and retention because it opens the door to what's at the bottom rising to the top. It enhances engagement and retention. Number three, it develops a talent pipeline of future leaders. You help create future leaders when they know they have a place. Number four, it promotes innovation and adaptability. It keeps freshness coming. It keeps new coming. Number five, it creates a positive church culture of growth and opportunity. It creates a positive church culture of growth and opportunity. Without a succession plan for ministries, we will continue to rebuild, and rebuild. We will be delinquent in accomplishing the kingdom mandate, which is to be fruitful, to multiply, to replenish, subdue, and to have dominion. Ministry, auxiliary, succession plan, I believe it is necessary for the strength and the health of our local churches. It's not about replacement. It's about healthy continuity.
Say that again. Please say that again.
That concludes my presentation.
Please say it again. Say that last part.
Oh, what did I say? What did I say? It's not, yeah, it's not, whew, I had a fog there for a minute. Okay. It's not about replacement. It's not about replacement. It's about creating Healthy continuity. And I want to put the emphasis on that adjective, healthy, because we can continue, but the question is, at what expense? So we can go on, but if what we had is all gone, right? We can still do it. We can still make it happen. We can still meet up, but ain't nobody showing up. So we want healthy continuity. All right. I think I've exhausted my time, and it is 8:30. All right. Thank you so much.